This is such a fun topic, global etiquette. Um, this is something that I really, really wish we were face to face and we would do so much together, guys. But I'm going to keep this short. And then when we have our discussion face to face for this or in this week, I'll bring out some etiquette things that we can talk about together. But I'll give you guys a very brief overview of global etiquette right now. So let's get started. So global etiquette. Here's where I wish we were face to face right now. How do we greet a friend and how do we greet a business person? No matter what country we're in, there are differences, right, in our greetings. In the US, in a business setting, I am never going to walk up to someone and give them a hug, okay? I will walk up to someone and extend my hand and shake their hand. I am never going to reach out and shake the hand of a friend. I'm going to hug them. So there are different greetings, right? So if I'm meeting a Brazilian friend, I'm actually going to reach over and give them kisses on their cheeks, air kisses, right? And if I'm in a business environment with older people or more senior people, I'm probably not going to kiss them in a Brazilian setting either. So then there are other cultures where I would actually bow a little bit, okay? So what are those greetings? Another thing is gifts, right? What gifts are appropriate or expected in a business setting? When do you tip? Do you tip at all? And how much? Do you use humor? How do you use humor? From our introductions online, several of you talked about tipping and several of you talked about humor. And these are challenging situations in an international environment because it's going to be different. And when there are language barriers or cultural barriers, stay away from humor. Humor is dangerous if the cultures are not understood. So here's, the highlights of global etiquette, and you would need to inform yourself on each of these items and what is acceptable in the countries that you are dealing with. So this sort of thing, in my opinion, would be really good to put on your website, talking about that culture, or something fun to summarize into that creative piece that we've talked about. So introductions, greetings, handshakes, bowing, you really, really need to be up on this. So if you are introducing people, seniority matters and guests matter. So understanding who you greet, when and how, and what order becomes crucial. If in doubt, start with the highest ranking guest and introduce that guest to your highest ranking local person, okay, from your company, and then work down. But you're introducing the guest around and hopefully giving them a little bit of information about each person in an appropriate way. So you also need to know what the greetings are, the most appropriate greetings, saying hello and goodbye. Do you spend time talking about family? And do you, if it's soccer season, are you going to talk about soccer a little bit? In some cultures, that can be very important. You also need to know what the handshake protocol is and those types of greetings. Business cards. So I don't have a business card at this desk. So if you're handing a business card, in some cultures, you must hand it over with two hands, okay? In other cultures, you're handing it with the right hand. When you hand it over, the safest is to be sure that it is face up, facing them, so they can read it right away. They don't have to switch it around. Americans don't care. We just hand it over, okay? Then what do you do with that business card? Back pockets, side pockets are very insulting to a lot of cultures. So you either want to put it in a vest pocket, or you want to put it into a padfolio, but you want to be very respectful of those cards that were handed to you, okay? And I would say that is a very safe, general practice, especially for Americans who tend to be so casual about it. Position and status. So understanding the protocol based on the status of each person that you're interacting with, where people sit around a table, a business table or a meal, is also very important. Electronic communication etiquette, we talked about that in the previous chapter. Dining practices and tipping. So who pays, who tips, do you tip at all, what happens? So I have not experienced this, but I read recently that if you go to a business meeting in Korea, they may ask you out to eat and take you to a karaoke place and expect you to sing. And not be offended if you don't know how to sing, but you need to try. I thought that was fascinating because it is so different from our business environment. Gift giving. I've mentioned gift giving before. Understanding the etiquette of gift giving is very important. Understanding what colors are appropriate, the do's and don'ts of the types of gifts. I mentioned clocks earlier. And then travel etiquette as well. So one of the things about travel etiquette is do everything you can to travel light. And if you're traveling with a lot of stuff, may it be things that you need for the business, not your entire wardrobe in a huge suitcase, okay? You are better off to learn, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but capsule building, where you have main pieces and you can mix and match in a variety of ways. You are better off doing that sort of thing. Another thing about travel etiquette, now this is the gospel according to Kim, okay? If you're traveling to a culture where they dress very differently than you do in your home culture, it would be wise to err on the side of conservative. So always have a dark suit. Women having a skirt suit where the skirt is below your knees is very appropriate. Women need to know if pants are allowed in the culture they're going to. And yes, if it's frowned upon, you need to figure that out, okay, because you do not want to be offensive. Um, if you're traveling to a culture where women wear a head covering, that's going to be something you need to decide if you're going to do that or not. Usually not necessary, but if you go out socially in the evening in mixed company, you may want to ask one of the women if you could borrow a headscarf.
Hey, Dad, can I take a question? Sure, sweetheart. Should I consolidate my debt on a single credit card to pay down faster?
I don't know what happened here.
Here's some advice my father gave me. Yes, Camel has the biggest eye.
That was interesting. I have a bunch of videos, had a bunch of videos queued up to show to a group, and the video just started. So now I've closed it and I don't know what those links are. Anyway, okay, so you do want to figure out what is most appropriate. One of the things that I really love doing, because I love blending in, honoring people with their ways of dressing. Like, for example, when I went to Burkina Faso with a group of students, I asked a friend of mine who lives over there, and we were going to go work with her husband. So I messaged her on WhatsApp and asked her if she could get some clothing made for me and the other women, so that at least by the time Sabbath came, all of us women and all of us women were wearing African dresses. So we took measurements and we sent all our measurements, and my friend chose the material. And when we arrived in Africa, we were able to try the clothing on. The seamstress finished it, and I was able to wear, by the time we went to a village, I was in African attire. So it may be that you, if the clothing is very, very different and you're going to be going out socially, you may have an interest in going shopping early on and buying one or two pieces that are culturally acceptable. Now, if everybody professionally is wearing Western clothes and that's what you have, then it's no big deal. But understanding what is acceptable and not acceptable socially and professionally is very, very appropriate. Oh, one more thing before I close this out. So there was a big thing in the news, I want to say maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where some of the Arab countries said that if the airlines were bringing females, female flight attendants, and the flight attendants got out of the airplane, like out of the airplane into the airport, they were going to need to cover their hair. And a lot of countries got upset about it. It created a huge thing. And this particularly one country, and I'm blank on who it is, guys, they were extremely insistent. And Air France was in the news because the flight attendants from Air France went on strike, and the country stood firm. They said, then just send us men. If your women are coming to our country, they need to be respectful. So why not make the gesture when you know ahead of time and avoid those types of situations? Um, and not all cultures are going to accept women in business in the same way. And taking those things into account, even if it goes against your own um, belief system of equality, etc., is something that a corporation needs to consider. If a woman is not going to be accepted in a negotiation, why would you jeopardize that negotiation? Now, if I were a man sitting here telling you this, it could be a lot more offensive. But women, we must do what it takes, and what it takes within our ethical norms, okay? But we must take the steps to be considered as respectable as possible. And if it means that we take a man with us on a business trip so that we are more respectable and acceptable, I'm all for it, personally. So those are things that you guys will need to consider as you move along in these situations. Okay. Um, I hope this was helpful to you as you consider the global etiquette for the papers and stuff that you are writing.